Thanks. By the way, how many of you were Wyvillians a long time ago? Cool. That's great. Actually, I'll tell you my story about that. So I go into Wyville a lot. Okay, so the kids know me. It turns out I'm world famous amongst 12-year-olds. Not as me, because that would work, but as super kid. Actually, they think it's super like me. But anyway, so typically when I go into Wyville, the first question someone asks me is, how do I get a job at Wyville? Okay, because I want to work for Wyville. And for 16 years, I've been telling them the same thing, which is, the people who work for Wyville are real adults. They have degrees, like a lot of degrees you guys have, and creative design, and software, etc. So, Wyville's an educational space. If you guys want a job at Wyville eventually, you need to get a degree and blah, 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 blah. Well, about a year ago, I got the first email of the following sort. I did it. Where's my job? And this has now become a torrent. I get one of these about every 2 weeks. Okay, saying, I did it. Okay, here it is. And I got one about a few weeks ago, or actually earlier this summer, from a woman who got her undergraduate degree in computer science at Columbia. Then she got an MFA at the Rhode Island School of Design. And then now she's in law school. And she said, I have this pile of money to actually this summer do an internship somewhere, and I'd like to come back to Wyville and do it at Wyville. So you can't say no to that. So we actually hired the first ever Wyvillian back in. If you stick around long enough, these things start to happen. It's kind of scary. Anyway, so you may notice that the title on this is different than the title in the book, right? So actually, I decided sometime yesterday afternoon that I might talk about something different than I was going to talk about, or weave in a little bit of the learning games, entertainment games thing in this. Okay, and I further modified the talk walking around here the last day and a half because I like to be relevant. Okay. The other thing to tell you is that the conversations in these rooms are really fascinating. My job, as I see it, is to talk sort of from 36,000 feet. I hear a lot of questions about exactly what kind of software you do to keep track of the branch points in the game, etc. I'm not going to be talking at that level at all. What I'm going to be talking about is really that. Okay, what does Minecraft, and actually, I wouldn't have said it, but I'm glad that someone did. Wyville was the first Minecraft. You'll see about some of that in a minute anyway. Or at least built on the same principle that a lot of Minecraft's built on. What does the fact that millions and millions and millions of children, and not only children, are playing this game mean for the business you guys are in? Because I think it actually does something. So, what is Minecraft? Does anybody not know? Clearly, everybody knows. By the way, who didn't know about Minecraft a year ago? Right. So yeah, it turns out $2.5 billion tends to attract attention right away. Okay. I actually found out about Minecraft at a conference 4 years ago. I thought it was really cool. Brought it home, showed it to my 4-year-old. Okay, we got totally into it. At the time, my 7-year-old was completely into Pokemon. And about a year ago, the 7-year-old completely converted to Minecraft. So they now completely forgotten about Pokemon, although he's still the world's expert, I think. And they're now both doing Minecraft obsessively. When I tell them, what about Wyville? They say, yeah, that's great. You don't have zombies. Nobody dies. In April 2014, Minecraft became the 13th most populous country in the world. They have actual revenue, like estimated $250 million. Okay? The really amazing thing if you're in this business is they are selling apps on the App Store for $7. Okay? Many companies are still trying to figure out how to get over the 99 cents. Okay? And 14% of their users have paid. The conversion rates at Club Penguin, okay, are like 0.001. In part because Club Penguin is really stupid. It's another bad Whyville knockoff. But anyway, that's an amazing thing. And if you're in this business, and we're all in the business, and I'm in the business to change the world, but in order to change the world, you actually have to have revenue. Okay, and I've been running a company now for 17 years, so that's like 4 generations in this space. So revenue matters, but so revenue does matter. So we can thank Minecraft, I think, for sort of pushing this. Minecraft is now the 3rd, in 3 years, it's the 3rd most downloaded game in history. Okay. And we all know that no offense, where's the Microsoft person, just block yours for a minute. Well, this semantic hurt. And my son's reaction, my 10-year-old son's reaction was, no!
Oh, no.
We'll see. So what is Whyville? We sort of already introduced you a little bit. This is K0 that actually tracks virtual world companies and sites. So this was from 2012. You see Minecraft at that point was only 28 million. And if you come down here a little bit, you see this Whyville thing, which was 7 at that time. Okay. However, there's sort of an interesting thing about Whyville as a site. If you get the big version of K0's universe chart, you'll notice there's a little dot way down here at the very beginning. And that actually is Whyville. So as I said, we've been doing this for 17 years. And that's sort of our growth. We're about 8.1 million registered users now. That's with no marketing. Because I deeply do not believe in marketing. And my business guys say, look at Minecraft. I say, yeah, but look, on the internet, it's really good. It'll grow. And you can fake by marketing. You can convince yourself that something's real that isn't. So I just decided not to do that. These are our demographics. Average login, this is average for all users, all times like 35 minutes, which just turned out to be a very long number. So 10,000, more than 10,000 of our kids have actually been on for more than 5 years. In fact, we have a significant proportion of kids on the site that are now in their mid-20s, who came in when they were 12. If you're in the learning space, that longevity is really important. Okay? And you want to connect to people for a long time, like forever, if you're interested in learning. Okay? We're 78% female. We were not designed to be female. We've always been dominantly. Now we're 78%. And the average age is 14. Used to be the average age was 12, but like I say, people stick around. Minecraft, as far as I can tell, and they don't give out a lot of their data, is about 90% male. Now 10% female is still a lot if you're talking about millions. Okay, so it is not a male-only site. But the proportion of females in Minecraft is just about the same proportion as in this group. So, just briefly, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Whyville at this level, but Whyville is actually a platform with 150 different activities plus. Okay? Anyone can go, it's free. Pull down on the bus menu, you'll see 150 different places you can do 150 different things we've accumulated over 17 years. Most all of it funded by about 75 sponsors with a very broad range. One other point about the platform, there are a lot of learning games now where basically it's like an old video arcade. You go, because they're thinking that way, you go on the internet and you see a whole list of possible games you can play. You know lots of sites like this. We actually think that one of the things about this technology is that it can link things together. And that's what makes it really cool. So we introduced a new thing, and this is actually sort of the links around nutrition. And Wyville. The core activity kids can actually eat. And if they happen to eat badly, they get things like osteoporosis. Right? Which bandages up their head of their appetite. Okay. The cool thing in Wyville is you can get rid of osteoporosis if you eat well. Okay, so that's sort of the core thing. But there's a lot of other stuff around. You guys, because you're in the game development, might be interested in going to something EMP set up for us, or we paid for, which is the app Wyville game design space. We took the Angry Birds engine, which as you probably know is open source, put it in Wyville, and made a space where kids could collaboratively build games together. We now have 2 or 3 other engines, puzzle type and other types of engines they can use to build games. They make thousands a month of games. And then they rate them. Okay? And it turns out that the top game last year was one with an Angry Birds game, except you weren't killing pigs. You had to figure out some way to eat, avoiding the McDonald's hamburger, and getting to the broccoli. Okay? So it was, and we didn't tell them to do this, and we did not tell the kids to vote for that one. Someone made it, and the kids voted as the most interesting game on Wyville for that year. Okay, so imagine Angry Birds meets the school nutritionist, designed by 12. Oh, one other little small point. We actually launched the part of Wyville is MyVille, where you actually make houses out of blocks and make your neighborhood. We had the foresight in 2001 to patent that. So that's just an aside. So Minecraft, here's the best definition I found of Minecraft. Okay, you can imagine sitting in the design space, you know, in your company, and everyone's saying, we got $20 million, we have to do something really cool. Let's make a game. You know, let's spend the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month diagramming it, putting it on the board, you know, digging, blah, 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 doing research, blah, blah, blah. Someone says, no. Nope. Let's make a game where you can place blocks, build anything you can imagine, and then just have monsters fight. Right? 5 years later, you get $2.5 billion. Okay? Pretty remarkable. So why? How? How does that work? Why is Minecraft? I would actually do this interactive, but I'll just tell you. Okay? You probably already know. Actually, why does Minecraft work? Because you build it. By the way, how many of you are not in this industry because you don't like to build things? That's adult. Humans like building stuff. That's why we have bees. Right? Bees connected to this. Everybody likes to build stuff. Everybody. And the more they can, the more they're engaged in it, the more they use it, the more they care. I'm a neurobiologist. I will not spend the next hour and a half telling you the basis for game business, which basically comes down to primates like to play, to learn, and to mate. When I sit and listen to some of your design stuff here, I sit and think about it from a point of neuroscience. And then you're talking about, you know, that you should not all the time win, you need to lose a bunch of time, and et cetera. It's just learning and mating in a slightly different form. But I'm not going to spend an hour talking about that because you wouldn't tolerate it. I wouldn't want to do it. So, Minecraft, like Wyville, and they're quite similar in their basic pedagogy or structure, is user-centric, fundamentally user-centric. Okay? I mean, the user is not a target. I heard that word a lot here last day. My target is 12-year-olds. That's sort of scary. Especially because some of the stuff you guys make, and some of you even carry around, and this guy over here, his arm. So I worked with him the last couple of days. Anyway, they should be and can be your collaborator. Because the amazing thing about this device connected to that network is that the wire goes 2 ways. That's the real revolution here. For 1,000 years, we've been in the broadcast business. publishing, textbook publishers, the printing press is broadcast, TV is broadcast, radio is broadcast. We are now in collaboration because there's a wire that comes back at scale. And the pick your nose was mentioned. So here's a funny Weidel story. The first thing we knew that kids should be able to customize their avatars. Not pick from your set of avatars, but customize their avatars. But I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't think deeply enough about that. So I hired an artist to make a bunch of avatar parts. I thought it'd be cool if kids could make their avatar out of parts. This kind of customization. So we put up Pick Your Nose and put of what are now called, were very old avatar parts made by an artist. Within about 25 minutes, I got my first email back saying, your parts suck. Okay? So I went in. I did not hire a better artist. I said, we're going to design a face part factory and let the kids make their own parts. That became the basis of the Weidel economy. Kids start face part companies. They make face parts. They sell them to other kids for clams. Okay? And we have little 13, 14-year-old girls managing companies with 15 people. Designers, salespeople, people that go out and interview other people about, whether they like the parts or not. Okay? Huge thing. And it turns out they didn't only make avatar parts, they make all kinds of other parts. Of course, they desperately try all the time to make parts that we don't want on a site for 12-year-olds. So we have to curate the parts, and they're very sophisticated about that. They'll get together 5 of them. You make this piece, you make that piece, you make this piece, you make that piece. We'll accumulate them all together, and we'll have a large, obnoxious thing that they don't want to wipe out. So we have to spend a lot of time curating parts and pay attention to this. But that's okay, because the dialogue goes on between that. So there are now 4,000 face part companies. There are 4,000 companies being run in Wyville, mostly by 12, 13, 14-year-olds, and some folks. So one of the problems we had then is that kids started wanting their friends to make over them, make them over. Like, you've got a really cool avatar, so could you make me over in your style? How do you do that? You give someone else your password. Very bad idea. And illegal. But it was a huge problem, so what did we do? Okay? We didn't tell them to put passwords and throw them all out because they were, no, we made a style studio. There are children now that are running style studios in Wyville where you can go in. They will make you over in their style. And by the way, they all make backdoor connections with the clothing designers. So they have special economic relationships with particular clothing designers. Okay, so it all becomes kind of a scam. But it's a scam that you better know about if you're planning to buy clothes in the real world anyway. And the kids love it. So here's a big one, and nobody should boo at the next thing I'm going to say. Okay, please. Oh, you can grunt. You can tweet. Just don't boo. What's the deal with the graphics? No? I mean, seriously. That? I don't know, some of you might know Ben Sawyer is. He's one of the guys that's very prominent in the games for health business. He introduced me at a meeting a couple of years ago at Keynote, in which he did a very short introduction. He said, all I can say about Wyville is it's crap that works. He was referring to the graphics. Okay? So I'll say this and then I won't say more about it. Okay? South Park is doing great. Okay? The Simpsons, okay, has been setting it's 25 years or something. I mean, they just, I live in Oregon. Springfield, which is the original is based in Oregon, they just put a plaque downtown that symbolizes the Simpsons. that graphics suck. Okay? I would just warn you. In my experience, usually if you spend too much on graphics, it means you're covering up not much else there. You don't need AAA graphics. They didn't, we don't. What you need is substance. Okay? The American automobile industry finally realized that, but it took a while. So what's the consequence? Why are the graphics lousy and relatively lousy in Yville and lousy in Minecraft? Why?
I was going to say the same thing, simplicity.
Well, why? It's its own shape. Someone said, low budget. No, that's not the point. We're not low budget. Yeah.
With the world having to be so big and most of it being randomly generated, making really complex graphics on top of it.
That's a really good point. Okay, in Second Life, I was actually an early advisor to Second Life for about a month. And then we decided we shouldn't have that conversation anymore because I just said, look, if you rely on all this high-end graphics, you're going to require people to have a special machine and high connectivity. That means you're going to cut out most of the world. Why would you do that? That's right. There's another reason. Yeah.
Let players use their own imagination.
Precisely. Precisely. The more fancy the graphics, the less likely the users can contribute. Okay? Second Life, well less than 1% ever made anything. In Minecraft, 100% make stuff. Here's a comparison of, based on search data, of interest in Second Life. And by the way, Second Life in 2007 is going to get enormous amount of press. Only some of it negative for me. Most of the rest of it pretty positive. Universities all of a sudden decided Second Life is the future, and off they dashed. Right? But Minecraft all by itself has just been why. It's because the graphics allow the users to actually make stuff. Right? So that's user-generated content. Yeah.
So you're saying, so just to clarify, you're saying that the graphics are intentionally low quality so that people can say, I can do better and make their own?
Sure, why not? I mean, I don't know. The Minecraft guys don't talk to me, believe me. They know I have patents. Now it's the Microsoft guys I got to talk to. But anyway, yeah, why not? Why not? Everyone likes making stuff. Right? There's a lot of biological reason for that, but everyone likes doing it. If the graphics is too wild, you can't. So that's user-generated content. Here's one. User-generated hierarchies. A lot of what you hear in game design is, how do we hook them? By at the end of the play session, they have the opportunity to move up to the next level. Okay? So leveling, big deal. Okay? In Yville and in Minecraft, they self-level. So this is a bunch of avatars of a bunch of kids, and this indicates their clam salaries. In Yville, you get your clam salary. Every time you log in, you get your salary, and the amount you get is dependent on how much you've done. So it's more or less directly correlated to how much you've learned. Okay? So it turns out, the more clams you have, the longer you're in Yville, the more you know, the fancier your avatar is, and the more respect you get. And we hand out little emblems that say you've been there for 5 years, you've been there for 2 years, etc. And that's a huge thing. So they're constructing their own hierarchy. We don't have to do it. The status is related, the salary is related to status, and their salary is related to their success or how much they learn. In Minecraft, users level themselves using YouTube. Right? In fact, here's some interesting numbers. You want to guess? I'll give you a clue, and then you guess the next number. Okay? Clue. World of Warcraft. If you search World of Warcraft on YouTube, you come up with 1 million videos. How many did you come up with for Minecraft? 98 million. Obama only gets 20. And he's president of the United States. And he's been in office longer than Minecraft has existed. Right? So, you know, my kids sit there with Minecraft on the screen and YouTube videos playing with their mobile device. You guys do this too. But these are 6-year-olds. 6-year-old, 10-year-olds sitting there doing this. And turning the volume down whenever one of the guys on the YouTube video says something their mother doesn't like. So here's another one, next level. That's user-generated hierarchy. Here's user-generated narrative. An enormous amount of the gaming industry is around building a narrative. In Minecraft and in Yville, kids build their own narrative. Okay? So let me give you an example, sort of an example. So we often get challenges. People come to us and say, you know, we have a spectacular thing for kids for learning, but no kid goes. Can you help us? Sure. Okay. So here's an example. MacArthur and a bunch of other people have done millions and millions of dollars into something called the Encyclopedia of Life. How many of you have ever heard of it? Right. So it is every living thing has an entry, and they're pretty. Okay? So they came to us and said, can you get children involved in the Encyclopedia for Life? I said, do you have dinosaurs? No. It's living things. So we just cut off a substantial number of children by not including dinosaurs. So we have alligators. I said, oh, that's okay. We have birds. Oh, okay. Right? Is there a way to get kids to use the Encyclopedia of Life? Sure there is. It's not by putting up a search site that allows you to search for every animal you could possibly want. Why would you do that? There's no context. Why would a kid care? So, with funding from MacArthur and working with the Field Museum, we launched something called Why Reef. What do kids do? They jump in and swim around with the animals, the plants. Okay? Well, that is interesting because it's actually quite beautiful. Some of the nicest graphics. My book is we're working with curators, believe me, at the Field Museum. If the graphics aren't good, they get very upset. Okay? But that gets boring after a while. So they know they're in Yville, and therefore there's going to be a way to make clams. There's going to be a way to do something. In this case, what they can do is put on these corridors and go around and identify the fish and the animals and the plants. And guess what? That links to the Encyclopedia of Life. Okay? So immediately they had thousands and thousands of children reading the Encyclopedia of Life. But, interesting thing, and we don't tell them this stuff, there were 2 reefs, North Reef and South Reef. And they were going through, there's also a food web thing, so they can figure out where this animal fits in the food web. No one's requiring to do this. It turns out it's interesting. Yeah. And so they started noticing, after about a week, that one reef had a lot of large predators and the other one didn't. This started a whole thing that they petitioned the Senate. Yville has its own government system. It's run for Senate. Yeah, it's cool, except they cheat, of course. And we know. One of the cool things about Yville, by the way, is that I know everything. Okay, and I'm permanently deep-throated. And by the way, I said that recently in honest to people about your age, and they went, no one knows. No one knows. You guys, how many of you know what deep-throat was? Good. I thought there was a movie, you know. Anyway, so I'm the guy who tips off the people that write the Yville Times. Our children have been writing a newspaper. They say the newspaper business is dead? No. Our kids have been writing a newspaper for 16, 17 years. Great. Very well done. In fact, it's one of the highest prestige things you can do in Yville to be an editor for the Yville Times. Anyway, but I can tip off the editors and say, by the way, there's a scam going on in the elections. Don't tell them what. They go out and figure it out. And they publish it, so it's a better. Turns out the best form of government is benevolent despot. The problem is they tend to be preceded and followed by the non-benevolent type. So they found out on their own that there was a problem with one of the reefs. So they petitioned, we have to do something with the reef. Well, what's the problem? Nobody knew, blah, blah, blah. We knew they had to do something. So here's just some statistics after 2 months, okay? 2.3 million plays, 22 million times organisms were clicked on with the recorder. They actually identified 1.1 different times correctly the organism. And then this number is kind of interesting. In Wyville, if you want to do something about something, you have to donate plans. It's like building the Golden Gate Bridge, which some of you probably don't know, was built as a community fundraising effort. So we have no taxes in Wyville. If kids want to do something, they donate money to do it. So they already donated 2.3 million plans to fix the reef. They found out that there was a trawler that was over the North Reef that was picking up all the big fish, and this was killing the reef, so we went to the Senate. The Senate passed a law declaring a marine sanctuary over the North Reef and South Reef. There was a lot of debate about that because guys that imagined they would eventually fish the reefs were complaining that it was going to cost jobs. And I'm not kidding. Anyway, so let's now go to sort of some take-home-ish stuff. There are other things I could talk about, but let's go to take-home-ish stuff. It's time to lose control. Really. It's time to lose control. Your users are your collaborators. They can be, they should be. Okay? And a lot of game design is very didactic, it's very narrative, and the question you're figuring out when you're playing the game is, what does the designer want me to do next? Right? And your job as a game designer is to make sure that that's interesting. Or it furthers, their leveling or whatever. What I'm talking about is open-ended, okay? User-centric, or student, in case of a learner, it's called sandbox. The question they're asking is, what can I or we do next? As Wyville is a social place. That's a fundamentally more engaging question. Oh, I'm not sure this is true, but I think I introduced the word engagement to this business, which I deeply regret. A talk I gave in 1999. But anyway, by the way, you are part of the we. And that's the business. So, Super Mario is a kind of game, that's a kind of game. That game is a platform. And you guys know more about this than I do. Some of you actually have degrees in this stuff. And I don't, I'm just a neurobiologist. Okay? But that kind of game, you set a platform, you set up the rules, and they figure out how to play it. It's very different than storyboarding. For learning, that's what you want to do. It's not what people are doing, but it's what you want to do. And I actually think for the future, that these kids, where this is embedded in their souls, that's what you're going to have to increasingly do if you want to make a couple $1 billion. And also influence the world. Development is continual. It's one of the keys to Wyville. We dump stuff on them all the time. They don't know what's coming. It's a key to Minecraft. My kids find the new mod. Off we go. It's continual. The old model is you sit, you ponder, you do a couple focus groups, you hope and launch and market the heck out of it and hope that it gets over the threshold so it keeps going. This wire goes too late. You don't have to do that anymore. I don't think you should do it anymore. Okay? It's a very different kind of design cycle. This is a big difference for learning too. In the traditional business, video game business, okay, you want them to use it, burn it up, and then move on to the next version. Because that's your business model. $45 now, $45 a year from now. And learning is not what you want. You want them to get involved and stay continuously involved. Okay? From 3 to 90. And that's what we built this platform to do. And by the way, 8% of Wyville's users are over the age of 60. Okay? So this is a big difference in learning, but wouldn't you like to have a company that had a product that maintained a connection to somebody for 80 years. That'd be cool. Might even be profitable. Right? So, what about the current state of learning games? It's miserable. And by the way, I had to really bump myself up to stand up here and tell you what I really think, because it's in my nature. Anyway, it's really a mess. One of the reasons is because they're looking at the AAA gaming industry and saying, we need to do that. In my opinion. Okay? You don't. But what do you motivate you? Because again, everyone has to feed themselves. As students, a lot of you in the room are students, right? You can figure out how you pay back those loans, right? It's a non-trivial thing. Especially if the company wants to pay you like, maybe $100 a screen or something. Right? How is that? Anyway. Well, the digital learning market this year is $1 billion. And that's only 20%, conservatively measured, of the curriculum market. The textbook companies are dying. And I declared in 1985, which is the first game I built actually, was in 1985 in Hypercube for kids. The first virtual world I built, a game I built in 1985. And I declared publicly and in writing that my intent was to put the textbook business company out of business. I didn't have to, they're doing it themselves. It just took longer than I thought. This is the John Cooney Gantt Center, which is Sesame Street, basically. They have a research group now, and they're really into games, and they're putting out a whole series of reports about games. You might want to look at some of them. Anyway, they did one a little while ago in which they showed that over 50% of teachers in 2012, or 50% of teachers grades K to 8 are currently using games in their classrooms. Okay? 74% say it definitely increases student engagement, although they won't tell you what that means. 62% say it improves teaching and learning. Okay? All very positive numbers. 95% report that they are using games developed for education. When you ask them what that means, they don't know. And of course, most of these are free. Okay? And most of them are not, well, I would argue that any of those three things are really true if you look at it carefully. By the way, the learning game world has not noticed Minecraft. If you're in a classroom with 25 8-year-olds, it's kind of hard to avoid. So, one of the really amazing things to me over the last couple of years is that people that are interested in learning and digital technology and whatever are now adopting Minecraft. What are they doing? They're doing what the British Museum just announced it would do like 3 weeks ago. They're making a complete, beautiful version of the British Museum you can get through Minecraft. But by the way, when you get there, you can't build anything or break anything. What? Seriously? It's not enough to just see that 8-year-olds like Minecraft. You have to watch how they use it. I mean, my son would love to destroy the Elgin marble. And rebuild it. In fact, he'd move it back to Greece where it should be anyway. So, of course, the British Museum isn't going to have that at all. I mean, no one's going to mess with our collection. Forget it. Okay, so I see at conferences for learning games, I see people, here's my Minecraft implementation. It's a beautiful version of America in 1887. And you raise your hand and say, can the kids break it? And say, you get the point. So, if you listen to EA and other guys say, what's wrong with learning games? Well, they need better quality graphics. They need more sophisticated leveling. They need better narratives. And oh, by the way, don't forget it still has to be fun. Okay, well, sorry. Not true. That is true. But those things are not true. That's not to say that you can't do something interesting in the educational world with good graphics. one problem. It's too close a match between storyboarding a game and curriculum. It's made in heaven. The problem is that over there is not any way to learn. So don't take that and move it here. Sort of missing the whole point of what's going on. The other problem with learning games is there's always a hidden agenda, although unfortunately it's not often hidden. So you bring a game in and say, here, play this game, you'll like it. And the kid looks at it 1 minute later and says, no, I just tried to trick me into learning math. I hate math. Because you're always trying to trick me into learning math. I saw a great thing on the internet when I was putting this talk together, just by searching. Someone asked the question, why is it only in math class that someone is buying 60 watermelons? So with these kinds of learning games, the question is, what does the teacher expect me to do? Okay? Instead of the developer, it's the teacher. Okay? No. That's not what real learning is about. That's not what this technology can allow. Okay? And also, by the way, it's time we got past Super Mario, really. Really. I mean, saving the princess, okay. But you know. Saving some new version of the princess with higher firepower, I mean, come on. We can do better than that. In terms of diversifying things a little bit. And this is a terrible idea. You know, it's time to get past the printing press, too. That was like 600 years ago. It didn't work very well for learning. Okay? Just, this is a bit, that is not useful. It's old technology. For example, just one example. When you deal with learning, you really have to think, I think, these days, what does this now blow up in the old approach? And how much was the old approach dependent on the technology at the time? Quick question. Why do you take tests midterm and finals?
See if you're learning anything.
Right. But with this technology, you can see that instantaneously every minute. Right? So why do you build learning games where at halfway through you stop and take a test? It's ridiculous. And by the way, when is the time you should know if someone is not learning? When they're doing it, right? You can do that with this technology. It's not easy. You need to know what you're doing. We're working with ACT on this problem. Okay? And they know they need to change. Okay? So you know it's capable. We have to figure out new ways to do it. Okay? But the book is, by the way, one of my questions. Who says that math and science and chemistry and biology are different subjects?
They're not.
They're not. How many times have you been in educational conferences for the educational world where people talk about it's important that we actually integrate curriculum because the real world is integrated. Why are math, science, whatever? 2 reasons. 1, because you can put it in books. And 2, you organize university departments around those subjects. And the last thing the math guys want to do is talk to the guys in chemistry, believe me. I was a professor for 37 years. Anyway, so just 2 examples, there are many more. So let's take up, what are we going to do now? Well, first I'm going to talk about the worst, I mean, the most horrible. How many of you hate math? You can help with math. Okay, good. This guy doesn't like math either. He's smarter than math, apparently. Math is the worst didactic education there is. Here's something, if you don't know this, everything in math, almost, except for this strange mathematic theorist guys, is very practical. We built math as a tool to use. You don't see that in education, except buying water lines. So typical math education game is this one. You're saving the princess, and right at the last moment, you got to solve a problem that involves fractions. This is 90% of the math games. You laugh. Go look. Okay. What does this say? It says math is an impediment to what you really want. Math is this nasty hurdle you have to jump over to get to what you want. It's like, I hate 3rd grade math, or 3rd math, but I do it because otherwise I don't get to go to recess. Right? But the amazing thing, and of course this game has nothing to do with the math. The math is an obstacle to what you want. The amazing thing is math itself is a game. The core of math is puzzling. So when you make a math game, you should make the game around the math, not the math as an obstacle. Okay? Our kids were complaining that they really wanted to dance. Okay? And we opened up a disco with music that they make themselves. Toyota paid for them to make a music creation space in Wyville, so they could make tunes, sell them to other kids for clams, and they can play them in their Toyota with their Scions as they drive around, and they can also play them in disco. Okay? So anyway, so the kids said, well, what's the point of playing disco music? You can't dance. And they tried to dance by moving their avatars around, but it just wasn't cool. It's okay, we'll open up Mimi's Dance Studio. Mimi's Dance Studio, you get to design a dance in polar coordinate vector space. You wouldn't know that. But the indices are all there. You start at the origin, you go around, come back, have to get back to the origin. It's all there. Okay? So about 2 or 3 years ago, I got this email from a kid, internal Wyville mail, saying, Super It, you wouldn't believe what happened today in math class. I was sitting there. I hate math. And the teacher started talking. I hate the teacher. And I wasn't paying attention. Okay? And she thinks I'm stupid. And you know how 12-year-olds are, right? Anyway, so, and she said, then all of a sudden, she started talking about vectors. I said, wait a minute, that's just Mimi's Dance Studio. So she said, I raised my hand and answered the question. And you should have seen the look on my teacher's face. I went on. It was a big moment. And then she wrote and said, why didn't you tell us we were learning vectors? I wrote back and said, why do you think? Anyway, so we're now going to do a design thing. You're a design group, right? So we're going to do like a game jam. Right here. Okay? We're going to design a math game. Okay? And this is actually a project that was funded by the National Science Foundation, working with an organization called EDC, the Educational Development Center, which is one of the best curriculum design spaces in the world. Remarkable company in Boston. We're going to guy named Paul Goldenberg, that's Paul. And this is play math. Okay? This is what Paul thinks about math. Nothing should be arbitrary in mathematics. Kids should always understand why things work. Okay? I like the word why, that's why I named it why. I don't care about who. I don't care about what. Certainly don't care about when. Okay, why. So anyway. So Paul, we get along great with Paul. So here's the Siege 2014 Design Challenge. Okay? In the learning space, you have to think about what is it you're trying to accomplish. So here's the question. Identify I would actually say the core mathematical concept that 5th graders don't get. Which means they have literally zero chance of understanding how math works.
Fractions.
Nope, more basic than that. But you're right, fractions are tough. More basic than that?
Logic. Or numbers.
Numbers are getting closer.
0.
No.
Patterns.
What about relationships?
Greater than or less than?
You're too sophisticated.
Equal.
Equals. You said that. Hey, give the man a math degree. That's right. Equal sign. They don't know what it means. Do you know what they think it means? That's right. They think like a computer scientist. They think it means the answer comes next. So there's actually a study done this at Claremont Teachers College, and the Claremont people took the results to Pearson, the textbook publishing company, and said, please, in some cases, put the question mark on the left instead of the right of the equal sign, so they at least understand that there's some sort of equality here, there's a relationship. And Pearson said, no, it'll confuse teachers. Which is why the textbook industry has to go. But anyway, okay. So now, so good, we have equal. If you don't understand that's an equality, that's a function. You cannot understand the mathematical expression. All the rest of the stuff you're supposed to learn just doesn't work if you don't understand what that means. Okay? So now the question now is, from a design point of view, I want a motif, which by the way is how we define motif as a gaming learning structure. Okay? So the way to think about motifs. If you're selling advertising to a TV context, you have 3 motifs for advertising, right? You can write a commercial, you can do product placement, or you can sponsor the whole show. So those are motifs. So we sort of invented, for internal reasons, the idea of a motif as a structure for a game that involves learning a particular type. So what I want you to do now is to think about a motif that involves equality. It has a couple of other properties. One, it's a motif you can use all the way from preschool to college. So think about a game mechanic. It's a mechanic that applies to math all the way from preschool to college.
Watch this and shout it out.
And I'm going to give you one more clue and then you can shout it out. And the second thing about it is it needs to be something that humans instantly get. Instantly get. Yes. Or
Bartering system?
The what?
A bartering system?
Oh, that's a good choice, but it's, in fact, we're applying this to a bartering system in a minute, but it's not a more fundamental thing. Yeah. The seesaw.
Yeah, the scale, yeah.
A mobile. A scale. Okay? It's this. By the way, the really cool thing is that this is one of the first geometrical objects that children see. Although, unfortunately, most of the mobiles are designed so the parents can see them. Right? The kid just sees this going around like this, and the parents see the really cool thing. Which, by the way, is a metaphor. Okay? So that's right, mobiles. So, next part of the design, well, so as I said, one of the things we were looking for in a motif was something that went all the way from preschool to college. It turns out with mobiles that you can make very simple ones, or you can actually come up with systems of equations. If you add balloons, you get subtraction. With addition, meaning weight, and subtraction, meaning balloons, you get multiplication and division. And from there, calculus is not far behind. Okay? This is a structure that kids can start when they're preschool and continue to understand and develop all the way up through their learning of math. Okay? So, another important point for learning games, and I think also a little bit for your kids, okay? The self-leveling thing. The way that most learning games work now is they pose you a question, actually often just by asking a question, where, please identify the tethers and why. But anyway, okay? And then when you get it wrong, they come back and say, that's wrong. You know, make another effort, or here's the definition. Okay? You are set up to fail. Okay? We wanted, the way WIPO works is, we want kids to self-select their own level. By the way, Minecraft works the same way. You know, it took a couple of years before my young child wanted to get out of creative. Okay? He didn't want to get chased around by zombies. Why not? And now they debate how hard they want to make it, right? They can adjust the level or how hard it is. But the kids do it. The kid decides. I'm going to make a decision. So we wanted in math the kids to decide. And in education, the way it goes is you sort of give people crutches or hints, especially in math. So we designed this whole structure. This is a mobile. They're being asked to solve what is C to make it balance. Now, we can give them clues. Because you don't have to, you could have C, D, F, whatever. In this case, if it's the same, it has a letter that means that the same number goes to each one of those slots. That's a clue. Well, you can toggle that on or off. By the way, down at the bottom here are actually the algebraic expressions. If you just want to go down there and solve the algebraic expression, go for it. And if you do that, you get more clams. You have more money. So you can use all the tricks, all the crutches, or not. It's your choice. So in this case, we come back and say you're wrong. What we come back and say is, you've been solving this puzzle now with all the crutches for like a month, and you've made a total of 30 times. If you just toggle this one off, which we think you can do, you'll make 300. Your choice. That's what they do. They toggle it off. Because with 300 times, you can buy a really cool kit. So the last piece of this is the UGC, UGH, UGN piece. How do you motivate them? It's actually fun to play this game, but that's not really what motivates humans. Social motivates humans. Okay, the ability to show someone else you're smart motivates humans. Okay, the ability to participate in communication. It took the serious game industry a long time to realize that the stuff around the games was driving the games more than the games themselves. Social stuff. So Myville, this whole system, is connected to a system in which kids can actually challenge their friends. And there's a mentoring system where kids get rated as a mentor to actually help you learn how to do this. And the amazing thing is in classrooms, we've been testing this in schools in Boston. Okay? Kids love this. They love the chance themselves to show to challenge their, and you see it in Minecraft too. Okay? Kids challenging other kids, happens all the time. By the way, just a side note, how they design these puzzles tells us a lot about what they know about the math. This is actually, for us, an assessment of their knowledge. Okay? How they make, if you ever want, already, those of you who go to college, you know what you have. The real way to tell if the professor's on it or not is to look at their test. If the test is kind of dumb and stupid, then there's a good chance that it's not the course you want. Okay? So same thing here. The way to know what kids know is to actually see how they challenge it. And only one anecdote, or only one, I hate this kind of thing, but I can't actually show you the data yet because it's not quite compiled. So I had to put a little cute quote from a teacher that says kids love it. So there's a quote. If you want much more information about Wyville from an academic point of view, here's a book written by somebody else, not me, published by MIT Press last summer, all about Wyville. So we have always had an open door policy. We're all academics, so we all had an open door policy with respect to academics like Wyville. Wyville has more peer-reviewed papers in literature, I think, than any other site like it. Probably almost more than any other game. Okay. Anyway, here's a whole book you can get if you want to read more about how Wyville works. Last point. So here's this mobile. They're learning about equality. They're playing around. This is now a tool they have in their quiver. You guys, a lot of you design games in which kids accumulate tools. They do in Minecraft too. Tools plus metals and minerals plus stuff. We like, humans are bag ladies. We like accumulating stuff. Okay? So we do. Status. Okay? So part of the hook is the stuff you accumulate. So, you earn it. You earn the tool, you want to apply the tool. By the way, I just looked at this before I put up, but my goodness, someone should have thought of that before they did that. But anyway. This is biology again, and we want to go into it. Anyway. So now that kids understand this balancing thing, and you mentioned balance earlier, scales was mentioned. Okay, there's lots of places you can use scales. Wyville has a huge nutrition project, as I told you, in which kids can eat food and they need to solve nutritional problems. Well, that's a lot about balance. So we're actually in the process now of taking the math stuff that they learn how to use to figure out what equality is and applying that tool to other places in Wyville where they can now use that tool and apply it to other problems they have to solve, other games and activities. So I want to sort of give you a sense for how this works. Really, bottom line, this is like, put the flag up the pole and salute at it. It's really about community, right? Fundamentally, and you have an opportunity to build a community with your users that isn't, I'll make it and hope you like it, and please do, but let's make it together. Let's maintain this community connection and have our business based on the fact that we're giving you something you care about and you're telling us about it, and here we go. And I don't think it has to be learning strictly. Although I would say, in the talk I was going to give that I didn't give, was to say that I think a lot, if you look at a lot of the games that really work, they work because there's a learning piece in them. Whether the designers intended it or not, there's a learning piece. Whether it's the right thing or not, the right thing to learn or not, I don't know. But humans are learning machines. Every one of us. That's why we have this. That's why we have these. So if a human is going to engage with something, they're going to be learning something to their benefit. I just assumed it was something that was useful in the real world. Minecraft, the original 3 trees in Minecraft were spruce, I forget the other 2, something else. They immediately decided to fantasize the trees. Real mistake, I think, and unfortunate. They should have had 25 or 50 different types of real trees in Minecraft. They wouldn't have lost anything for the play, right? For Minecraft, it would have been connected to the real world, and kids could have actually learned about a bunch of different kinds of trees. Why not? They headed to fantasy. I don't know why they keep doing that. I don't think you need to do that.
It was open verse.
Thank you. Open verse. Now it's like fish trees. There's all kinds of weird stuff. And then let me just hail my hero. Okay? I don't intend to go out the same way he did. Although people have suggested it. So you do have something, you guys are very skilled. Okay? You're serious, you're paying attention, it's obvious in your sessions. You're really thinking about this, working on this, trying to do it. You have a huge amount to contribute to this effort. Okay? But it may not be what you think. Okay? It may not be that you need to come up with the ultimate narrative. Maybe you need to use your narrative skills to help kids come up with interesting narratives. Okay? You need to interact with them like a good theater professor interacts with a theater student. Okay? And if we all learn and play together, I think they'll come and they'll stay. At least they certainly are in Minecraft at this point, and they certainly have been in Wyville. So that's why I want to say thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the parties. I tend to talk too long. So actually, I don't know if we have time for questions or not. Who's in charge? We have time? Okay, good. Yeah, I'm off the TED circuit forever now because I didn't pay attention to the guy in front. Actually, I did. He kept holding up a 0. I told the story earlier. The guy kept holding up a 0, saying I was over. And I looked at him finally and said, you need negative numbers. 0 just means I got another couple of seconds. So, yeah, questions? Sure.
I'm curious, do you know of any more examples of well-made math games that didn't shove the concepts in your face like the one you put into Wyville?
I know a lot of board games that are like that. I know a lot of games that could be like that if kids realized they were doing math. I don't, maybe someone else here does.
Have you seen Dragon Box?
What?
Dragon Box.
Dragon Box, yeah, I'm not. So they probably are, I don't. Actually, I'm remarkably unknowledgeable. I'm spending too much time doing this. Yeah?
Actually, I
Yeah, it's interesting and kind of tricky, but it's interesting. Yeah. We actually, a couple of years ago, NASA came to us and said, I mentioned this in another session, came to us and said, there was a bunch of engineers making ion engines, which are the next form of propulsion for intergalactic travel, put it in the gaming context. And these ion engine engineers came in and said, we have a little extra money, we'd really like to make a game about ion engines because ion engines are the coolest thing in the world. And if we could only get kids to understand how cool ion engines are, then they'd stop war, they'd all become ion engine engineers and the world would be a great place. And I sort of have to look at these people and say, really? 12-year-olds? Seriously? You like ion engines, but that doesn't mean that they're not. So we did their ion engine simulation as they insisted, but we also made something called ion soccer, or ion football, sorry, and what happens is that there are two kids, one with a positively charged element, one with a negatively charged element on each team. And there's an ion injector that injects a single ion into the field. And then there are two goals. And your job as a kid on each team is to arrange yourself with your charge with respect to the other kids and their charge so that the ion goes into your goal. Okay? And they'll play it for hours. There's a problem because we don't show them field lines because that would be cheating. They just have to figure it out, which they do. They find out later in physics that they're physics lines. That's great. They can solve Poisson's equations as long as they want to. Okay, but we don't do that. The problem with Weigel is if we design a game like that, and for about a week I can beat them based on first principles, but after that I have no chance. Because they know. In fact, they find there are bugs. If you all stand over here in the corner, so the design of these things takes some time to think about. Didactic always slides into education easily because we all are highly motivated to want the kid to get this. And so you always have to be aware of how much you want versus how much they want. Another question? I'm sorry, I saw a hand go up. Yeah. So we have NASA built a rocket launching thing in Wyville as well. And it was actually sort of a funny story because we sent a huge proposal to them that involved the Wyville space station, because Wyville is a space station. And they said, yeah, we're going to do the whole thing, and we're going to give you this money to start. So you built the rocket launch and the trajectory designs, you're talking about systems, so kids can actually launch rockets to the space station. And then we'll give you some money about 6 months from now to do the rest of it. Great. So now how do we get the kids interested now in launching rockets to the space station? Because by itself is not necessarily interesting. So he said, okay, first we're going to build a space where it's actually teaches them about Newtonian physics, which is a zero-G gravity thing where they learn about moving around in zero-G. So you have to get certified as an astronaut. Okay? And then we need to get oxygen up there so you can survive. So you need to get all your friends together to launch rockets that pass little amounts of oxygen up to the space station. And we designed it so that this amount of oxygen, guessing times, they would send up rockets, and we would be exactly at the point where they could blast off and go to the space station themselves by the time the new funding came in from NASA. Yeah, oops. Right? Two things. First, the kids did it much faster than we thought. The second thing is NASA called and said, oh, by the way, that program was canceled. So now what do you do? And it's really funny. Coincidence? We had to have a leak in the space station. And about 1 week later, they announced the leak in the space station. The real one. Right after we told our kids that oxygen was leaking out of the space station, so they got to take oxygen out. So I think it was the Russians actually that had the problem. So I wrote a letter to the Russians and said, thank you very much. Anyway, any other questions? Sure.
On your statistics page, it was talking about the quote-unquote engagement with kids. Was that digital games only, or was that board games as well?
I don't remember which slide was, but it was probably just digital games. Yeah.
Can you explain why you don't like the term engagement?
Because I was probably the person who introduced it. And
That's
it's everywhere.
Oh.
I mean, every time I hear it, my brain goes, ah! Everyone's engaging everybody for everything. It's really annoying. And also, you have to define what engagement means. And one of the things that's funny in the gaming business, as you know, but also in the educational gaming business, is that, there aren't really a set of standards. People have them internally in their company, but there isn't really a standard for what engagement kind of means. Is it uniques per month? Is it the amount of time spent? Our view of the most important measure of engagement for us, and I think even for you, is how many years are they willing to stay connected to you? For learning, that's what matters. We imagine, in fact, we're designing a company around this now with our engine, that you will get connected to what we're doing when you are having a child, and that child will be connected to us forever. Because one of the, this is another topic I won't go into, we can talk about later, you may know yourselves, nobody knows what jobs are going to look like in the future, except they know this. They know that you're not going to have one for 45 years. And they also know that you're probably going to fundamentally change the kind of job you have about every 5 or 6 years, probably going forward. So the old model for universities, by the way, have a serious problem. They are 800 years old. Okay, universities are based on, the last thing I know, but universities are based on two premises, fundamentally. One is you have to go there to get information. No, not anymore. Second premise, you go there for 4 years, we give you a degree, that means you can launch yourself on a 50-year career. No, not anymore. Okay? So we need to have structures that connect the people early, stay connected to them forever. Okay? One last piece of that, just to think. This is thinking differently based on this. I mentioned earlier, you should be assessing learning while you're doing it. I mentioned this earlier to someone. 15 years ago, if you were my age, the last thing you ever wanted to do was get your blood pressure taken. Because that gave your wife motivation to tell you you couldn't have the french fries. Apple is about to make you pay $357 for something that will monitor your blood pressure continuously. And you will buy it and you will do it. Why? Because we slowly realized, okay, it's not the politics of marriages, but you need to know what your blood pressure is because that turns out to have a significant impact on your health. And as you know, people in my generation have decided they're never going to die. And the way to do that, avoid that is just keep on your blood pressure constantly. Okay? Educational assessment should be exactly the same thing. It shouldn't be an onerous task that you do to find out whether you get into Stanford or Georgia Tech. It should be a continuous process which tells you how well you are moving forward in the way you would like to move, just like blood pressure measure. And you can do that now with this technology. Okay? So the whole structure for universities is, tired and dying. And by the way, the solution to the problem is not to do the thing you do worst, which is to put 600 kids in a classroom in front of one professor and scale that to 40,000. That's the stupidest possible. The thing you do worse in the university, you're now using the internet to do, right? It makes no sense. So that will change. It will change. We're pushing it to change it. People like ACT are working with us to do it. So, okay. One more, and I promise it's a yes/no question, okay? Yeah, because otherwise I'll go on and on. You'll be sitting here.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate what you've done with Whitefield, how you made it kind of like a small world and given kids like an opportunity to choose what they want to do.
I knew there was a but. Yeah, go ahead.
The thing that is bothering me is that usually when people want to upgrade something, they usually upgrade it to something that depletes its original purpose. Like when Gatorade first came out, it tasted like vomit and spit put together, but it gave you energy. Now all of a sudden they decided to focus on taste, and when they did that, now they worry about electrolytes. So they turned Gatorade into Kool-Aid. And so what I was thinking of, when you start to make education fun for kids at an early age, what happens when they get older and they realize that education can no longer be fun? Does that
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. What you're saying is what happens when you get older and you find out that other people don't want education to be fun. I'm trying to deal with those people. Because, we think of when you think of education, the reason people don't like, when you talk to venture capitalists, okay, which I don't because it's a very bad conversation. It's not, I can tell you stories. But when I'm forced to talk, they want to, they call me and they talk to me, and they say, I say, we're an education company, and they say, call it something else. Because no one will ever fund an education company. By the way, that's changing now a little bit. Okay? But that's sort of historically true. And what I tell them is, no, we're not the education that was done to you. Okay? We're education. We're little e education. Not big E what was done to you. Okay? And that's one of the hardest things to change in the world. Is the way humans work is you do to people what they did to you. In education, I can tell you something. In math education, here's a question. Math educators will tell you all the time the sequence in math education from algebra to pre-algebra to algebra to this to that to there, eventually calculus is the only way to learn. Because it's been carefully designed and concepts built on each other and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So Paul Goldenberg is one of the top math educators in the world. Okay? He's hired by entire countries to redesign their math education. So I asked him one day, Paul, how much of all of that is simply folklore? It's accumulated over years and has no structural basis in math. His answer was 80%. Okay? So we accumulate things by folklore, and one of the things we accumulate by folklore is that math education is hard and difficult. You just got to fight with it, and you got to do it like taking bad medicine. Or at some point, sorry, you're going to end up in college. You're going to be in a class with 600 other kids, and it's going to be nasty and rotten. And what we're going to make you do in biology is memorize all this crap. You just have to do it, so eventually you end up becoming, I don't know what. Well, all that's just not true. So I'm not saying that there's no work in learning. There's a lot of work in learning. But it doesn't have to be painful. And if it is painful, it's your brain telling you something. Really. Okay? It's a premise, it's an assumption. But we think that it's true. I think it's true. We can make it hard and difficult and not feel like, what is the point of this? And right now, it's so much of it, especially math education, biology too. Biology is horrible. Every kid in America takes a biology class. Almost none of them ever take another one. That should be telling you something. Because biology is pretty amazing. When you go out on Friday or Saturday night, right? You guys are going to go out and sort of engage in biology tonight. And you're going to enjoy it. You're lucky. Sure. By the way, I'll stop whenever you want, but I can do this for hours.
How has this been used to actually teach main stuff like ethics, philosophy, and morals?
So when we launched Weibo in 1999, my intention was to completely transform education in the world. Okay, but education wasn't ready. So we launched Weibo as an informal site, and we were really doing R&D. In fact, Weibo is not a product. Weibo is skunkworks. The product is the engine, which is patented, and it's I just started a company called Virtual Worlds IP.
that are fundamentals of a lot of, actually, the internet stuff. So the real product is the engine. Wyville is just Wyville is the space in which we work with kids and humans to figure out how you do this. It's R&D. So we are right now building a series of joint ventures with companies that have real curriculum to do real things. Okay? Where we will build products on the engine that specifically are actually products. So pre-K 5 math, where you could, if you wanted to, you will, maybe schools might buy that product, or parents might, or people who missed pre-K 5 math, which is a lot of people, would buy it too. Because one other point about education is, I mentioned this earlier, you know, it's no longer related to your age or what classroom you're in because of this technology. So, you should go on Wyville look. There are a number of things we've done with respect to ethics. Wyville is one of the only sites that actually states what our ethics are before you join. For example, well, that's starting to be more common. We actually tell kids what the rules are. And to fully chat in Wyville, you have to pass a chat license test. It means you know about security and safety and stuff. By the way, kids pass it the first time every time, adults struggle. Kids know how to be safe on the internet, they just choose not to be. Adults don't know, they get screwed as a consequence. But anyway, we also have an interesting project with the Massachusetts School of Professional Psychiatry, which involves kids learning something about, one more quick story, do you mind? This was sort of amusing. So about 5 years ago, I got this funny call from Fleischman Hiller, which is a big advertising firm, asking me if, this is in the Bush administration, so as well for that, asking me if I would go to Washington to consult with the director of the National Drug Control Policy, okay, the White House. It was supposed to be an off-the-record consultation. No one was supposed to know we were talking. The Bush administration was really good about that sort of thing. And so I arrived, and here I am in the room as the director of the NSDCP, okay? And the other guy they invited is the executive producer of the Ozzy Osbourne show. Okay? Who, believe me, was out there. Okay? On TV. And so they wanted us to talk about kids on the internet and the problem with getting kids good information about drugs. Okay? Because the internet has so much stuff about it. It's wrong. So before I went into Wyville. I went to the Greek Theater, which is where we hang out with the kids. And they all, I said, every year we have to talk about something, so they all came and we all started talking, and they said, well, you want to talk about super ed? And I said, drugs. And so I started getting these lists of super ed, now we know, you're okay, but what, like your parents are watching you talk about drugs, the 12-year-olds. This is okay, bro. This is for the government. So, I'm sitting here with these kids, 40 of them, and I said, so do you think all the information on the internet about drugs is true? No. Do you trust what the government says on the internet about drugs? No. Why not? It's the government. And one kid, 13-year-old, wrote because they lied. So I thought he was watching Fox News, but it turns out, so I said, why? Why do you say they lie? Okay. He said, because what they say is not true. So what do you mean? I said, well, look, they tell you marijuana is the gateway drug. It's not. Nicotine's the gateway drug.
Wow.
Well, so I go to Washington. He's right. And I go, well, he's right. Nicotine is the drug that gets you connected. It's tied into all the heavy drug stuff in your brain. He's absolutely right. Marijuana is, by the way, I don't do drugs. You know, I do in Oregon. You don't. It's unusual. But just saying, okay? Marijuana is not the problem. The problem is nicotine. So I go to Washington, I'm sitting there with these guys, and they say, well, what are we going to do about that information about drugs on the internet? So you got a big problem. The kids recognize that your information is wrong. Okay? That the whole justification for the hundreds of millions of dollars that were being spent to keep kids from smoking dope access to the information, which of course, as you know, kids crowdsource. They figure things out by talking to their friends. It's a very good way to figure things out. We know from our studies that what goes on. So anyway, so we're seeing the Fleischmann-Hiller people, and while I was at it, and by the way, the MTV guy was just going off the top. I mean, we got into this thing where who can annoy them the most? And he was just going places I was not going to go. And the guys that spent $100 million, Fleischmann-Hiller, were sitting there. They were getting really annoyed. So, and then finally I said, who invented this idea that parents are the anti-drug? Who ever heard of trying to keep kids from doing drugs at age 13 because their parents don't want them to? Who thought that up? Right? I said, so finally I looked at the guy and I said, are you in the drug promotion business or the drug prevention business? Because let me tell you how kids use the information you distribute at schools. Right? You know, middle school age kids get this whole story on the names of the drugs, how much they cost, what they do. And even Walmart would love to do that. So he said, stop. We need to have an undisclosed conversation in an undisclosed location where he looked at me and said, you have no idea what you're stepping into. Okay? So we went back. Fine. And so the Fleischmann-Hiller person was so pissed off. She said, what would you do? So I'll tell you what I do. I open a crack house in Wyville. I'd addict all the kids to crack and have their lives fall apart. She looked at me and said, you want the government to open a crack house? For 12-year-olds? Seriously? I said, it would work. It would work. So anyway, NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, found out about this, okay, and they contacted me and said, we should think about this. You can't do it with drugs. What you can do is we can have another being, like maybe even, say, a monkey, okay, that shows up on the site, and the kids have to figure out what the monkey's problem is. Okay? And then figure out how to deal with it. Because it turns out that the way that most kids in America know somebody that has a drug problem, they just don't recognize it. So the brochures already exist in your local community or in your family. You just need a way to see it. And then you can't fix it. You need to know how to deal with it if you're 12 or 13. So we came up with this whole plan. NIDA looked at it, and it went up through the ranks, and they came back and said, this is too close to kids being addicted to drugs. However, we're now working with MSPP in Boston on the beginnings of a project to do exactly that. So kids will actually take on the husbandry of beings that have drug problems. They have to figure out what they are and figure out how to deal with it. So, again, this is an example of how you get into, how you can think about design getting into complicated subjects where the onus is still in the fist. Sure, one more, because we got it.
It's an association with that. So you mean like they would come across this maybe rabbit funny or something that they would want to adopt something of their own. But this rabbit has this really bad problem is he can't stop eating carrots. And so you really need to weed him off with the carrots, and in order to do that you give him a healthy lifestyle or something.
Well, so the interesting question in this whole domain, and if you know, the problem with drug abuse is that it doesn't go away. So the problem a 12-year-old really has, you have two problems. One, you would rather they not got into it. The second problem they have is, how do we deal with Uncle John? Or how do I deal with my parents? When Wyville came out of when I was a professor at Caltech for 17 years doing neuroscience, but I was also running this huge outreach project at public schools on science education in California, okay? Which was a hands-on, real kids, real experiments in classrooms. It was a huge project, $23 million worth of project over 17 years. And one of the things that kids did in third grade in this project was they did something called mystery powders. And mystery powders is basically analytic chemistry, where there are three powders, and you do various experiments to figure out what the powders are. One's baking soda, one's salt, whatever. So one of the teachers in the class, one of the classes was doing this, I think in Pasadena, said it would be cool to link this into like language arts, because kids love it. So she sent them home on a weekend to write an essay about what around their house is white and powder. Okay, it was interesting. Okay, well, I remember one kid wrote, so white powder is what my mom takes to fly out the window. So we are steeped in drugs in this country, as you probably know. The problem is not in telling kids about drugs artificially with pamphlets. The problem is, I think, giving them a way to look at people and say, aha, that might be the problem. It's not me. They might have a problem. How do I deal with it? So curing is not part of this, because it's not part of the prerequisites. Curing is not part of the prerequisites. It's coping and not going that way yourself. So that's all right. And that last point, this hidden agenda. I think to really do stuff that is impactful for, I hate that word, but for kids, okay? And in a learning setting, you really have to deal with the real world. It's not dream time.